How's it going? And welcome to episode 240 of On the Wire, proud member of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. I am Adam Howe, per usual, joined by my co-host in crime, Kevin Hasting. We got a great show after a slight hiatus, if you will, over the New Year break and over the holidays and what have you. And we're gonna get right into it, though, Kevin. We said right before we started recording, we're like, all right, so much has happened, so much news, and we either have to talk about all of it and nothing else, or skip it completely. Hey, spoiler, we're skipping it and we're getting right into our theme. But it's been a while. How you doing?
No, doing great, Adam. Hopefully you and your family had a great New Year. That's been it's been really cool recently. We've had quite a bit of news, but there's plenty of people talking about it. I don't think anybody's going to be missing out if we just dive right into our focus topic, and maybe it'll be nice for some people tune in and we're not rehashing everything that happened over the past couple weeks. Let's just dive into some new stuff.
Exactly. So I feel as though, this came to me a little bit ago when we started talking about it a day or two ago. We just kind of threw it out there as an idea. We hear a lot of talk. There's a lot of articles about the sleepers that are coming through, that usually the sleepers are young guys that are coming up as either prospects or maybe they're sophomores and they can make another step forward, what have you. And there's a lot of hype around the youth, if you will. But we talk, the term is used a lot, especially in draft and holds. But the old and boring, those are also very, very valuable in drafts, and they can go overlooked. Now, don't get me wrong. Obviously, there are superstars out there that are still of a certain age that can still produce, that we all expect them to produce. And they're probably going exactly where you expect them to go in ADP, regardless of age. But there is definitely a form of ageism when it comes to fantasy baseball. And as you are drafting, especially in the early drafts, it's really, really difficult to keep your eye off of the shiny new toy and keep it on the dull rock that is, has always been there for you. Hence the term, the rock, right? So we're going to go through current ADP, and I'm using, just as a reference, ADP from the NFBC. All drafts concluded between January 1st and January 19th, 2026. So there's about 34 there are 34 drafts in this data set. In all of these drafts, all the gladiators are over. So it's just draft and holds. There's a couple of FAAB leagues in here as well. There are 12s, there are 15s. And so there's a little bit of a mix, but not a whole lot of noise. And so I don't think ADP is going to fluctuate that much if you expand it, take it into a couple December drafts, or you're running ADP again toward the end of January. So we're going to do that, and we're going to go through and look at all the players that are entering, that will be entering 2026 as their age 35 season or older, and expected to play, throughout the course of the season. And we're going to go position by position. Kevin, we're going to get your take on basically, hey, are these types of players, are these individual players valued exactly where they should be in ADP, or is there value to be had in the expectations, especially where they're going in your drafts right now? So, overall thoughts about drafting these types of players or overdrafting these types of players. Can you build an entire team with just super veterans, if you will, like ultra veterans that have been in the league for quite some time, even though they are aging?
I think you probably could. The added bonus is you don't have to. You'd get a couple of early picks and then start taking them from there on. As we're going to see, the first couple of guys don't go till third or fourth round.
Right.
If using the criteria we did, age 35 and over. But yeah, Adam, you know that I am all about these guys. They're typically, in my opinion, undervalued, and that's kind of what we want to look at here tonight. Is each of these guys in the area they're going? some of the younger guys going around them, how do we think they compare? Of course, there is the added concern of the age, and we just never know when guys are going to start to fall off. But I think that is more than baked in typically to most of their draft costs, and that it's counted against them too much. And in most cases, we get a value with these types of players. And I don't think that surprises anybody hearing me say that.
No, sure. All right. Well, we're going to get into it. We are going to start with pitchers because there are more of them than everybody else. We'll start with starters. We'll get into relievers, and then we'll go into the rest of the positions. Maybe consider this our position preview
kind of
episode in a way, but only those 35 and older. We of course will do our version of the position preview episodes in the coming weeks, though we go category by category as we tend to do throughout the course of the season anyway. So I know there are a lot of great analysis based on the positions, so we'll try to give you a different take or a different version of that in the coming weeks and episodes as well. So let's get into it, Kevin. The first two pitchers that are lumped together, they're going pretty much back to back or very close to each other in ADP, and are of the age of 35 or older going into 2026 are Chris Sale, of course, of Atlanta, and Jacob deGrom, still with Texas. So going around ADP of 44, between 44 and 52, Chris Sale and deGrom, of course, not of pristine health, and that can be pretty much said about any pitcher, especially at this age. Like pretty much everybody we talked to has had some sort of injury history by this time in their career, and you know what? They're still ticking. They're still being drafted this high, especially these two that we're going to lump together. Going 40, Chris Sale going first at ADP 44, 12th overall pitcher off the board, going right after the likes of youngster Brian Wu, and right before youngster Hunter Green, who then go into Jacob deGrom. And then we have Cole Reagans and Max Fried, not the youngest kids on the block, especially in comparison to Hunter Green and Brian Wu, but still younger than the other two that we're talking to. So in this grouping, you talked about it just now, like you have the ability of baking in some youth in the first 2 or 3 rounds. But are you going to be, willing to make somebody like Chris Sale or Jacob deGrom your SP1 based on just their experience levels, their situations at hand, because that's if you are building your team with only 35 and older, and you want a decent starting pitcher, you're going to have to. Like in general sense, though, are you happy making one of these guys, if not both of these guys, going back to back as your SP1, SP2?
That's what I was thinking about as you were leading up to this question, Adam. Would I try to double tap these if they did reach the end of the 3rd round, which they don't quite do on average, but their max picks are right there. I think I'm trying to convince myself, because I think it's the right thing to do, that I should be more in on Chris Sale than I am, because I'm absolutely in on Jacob deGrom at this price. He's most of the projections, if you run an auction calculator, he's inside the top 10 starting pitchers by a couple of spots, and he's being drafted outside the top 10 by a couple spots. That's quite a bit of value at this early in a draft. Chris Sale also is probably even undervalued more so if you trust the projections, and the projections are only giving him when I was looking earlier, 158 innings. I don't know why I am so in on deGrom and not so on Chris Sale, and I think that's an issue for me in the sense that I should be in on both. Chris Sale's injuries have been kind of fluke injuries throughout his career. He never did have the arm problems that we thought he was going to have due to his body type when he was coming up. So I should be more in on Sale than I am. The issue with me is ADP here there is a group of 4 guys back to back at ADP, and I like them all better than when they're going, which is a good thing, right? I can, if I'm trying to double tap at the 3-4 turn here, just get 2 of these guys. And yes, I am going to convince myself that Chris Sale should be one of them. Jacob deGrom already would have been, and then Cole Reagans and Hunter Green, all right there going together. I think I would probably try to split it up, one of the two, to get to your question, one of Sale and deGrom, and then one of the younger guys, Cole Reagans not being super young, and Hunter Green not as so young anymore either. But I'd probably split it up. I'd probably take one of Sale and deGrom and then try to get one of Reagans and Green. And if that's my 1-2 punch and I've gotten 2 hitters in the first couple rounds, I'd be very happy there.
See, now my concern here is that we're trying to build a team. Like we're debating whether or not you can build a full team with, you know, these super veterans, as I'll just continue to use that term. It doesn't make any sense, but that's okay. And the thing with pitching, if you're, you know, what you want to make sure that you're getting, especially early on, is innings, right?
Mhm.
Controlled innings that you can count on, right? Now, do we believe that, you know, whatever innings Chris Sale and Jacob deGrom are going to provide to us are going to be good innings? Yeah, I mean, I think we all are in agreement. As long as they're on the field, as long as they're on the mound, going every 5th, every 6th day, they are going to produce, right? I mean, I don't think there's any concern about that. I think the only thing that's ever concerning about either one of these guys is any possibility of missed time, about, you know, just injuries, whether they're fluke injuries or you know, actual arm problems, what have you. And there's a whole lot of value just looking at the projection systems, as you mentioned. I mean, I'm going to keep referencing PLV projections right now. Chris Sale is the 6th highest rated pitcher in their projections, but only being projected with 158 innings. And, you know, with my SP1, in theory, like, I want somebody who I think is going to give me somewhere close to 200 innings.
Why?
And you're not going to, the thing is, you're not going to get that out of either one of these guys, no matter how well they do. You don't have to, though. 158 innings out of Chris Sale can equal 175, 180 innings out of somebody a little bit lower. Jacob deGrom, just 2 slots down from Sale in the PLV projections at only 165 innings. And so with the production that they can provide to you, you can still get that value. And the beauty is that when they are, you know, knock on wood, I'm not saying one, if they do get hurt, they do miss some time, they get a skip step or whatever the case may be, you can fill in that gap as well. They're not going to matter how hurt, unless they, you know, they're considerably hurt. You're not going to drop them. So you're going to be able to backfill in that space. So if you are waiting on the first 3 rounds, you're going hitter, and you want to start with somebody a little bit that you can count on, even though they're not going to get you 200 innings, this is probably the way to go. It's like, go with one of these veterans that you can trust, that when healthy, they will be producing.
Yeah, I think of it like the reason I said why when you said you're looking for 200 innings, and I know the answer, right? It's we've been conditioned that more innings is better, and yes, it absolutely can be, but I nobody is projected for 200 innings. Very few are projected for over 180, but innings is not a category. Yes, it will affect our counting stats, sure, but when we're talking guys of this caliber, Chris Sale is projected for more strikeouts in 158 innings than, let's see here, than deGrom in his 165, then Logan Gilbert in his 160, then Joe Ryan in 173, then Logan Webb in 199, right? He's projected for more strikeouts in those innings he is going to give us. Wins, he's projected for 12. There are 5, 6, 7 pitchers projected for more wins than that. So that's what we're worried about when we're talking about innings from our pitchers is our counting stats, which there's only two others, but right, the wins and the strikeouts, because we're not going to get saves from these guys. So those are the numbers I'm looking at. The question becomes, do you trust that Chris Sale will get 158 innings, right? And the answer for me is probably not close to 158. It's probably going to be close to 180 or 120, right? So
well,
that's the question. And that's what,
percentile.
Years ago, prior to deGrom finally getting his surgery, prior to that, Ariel Cohen would talk about it being a binary decision, right? You're not getting the innings they're projected for. You're going to get a lot more or a lot less. That's your decision with these guys. And I think from what we've saw last season, we have to, we don't have to. I'm going to believe that they are as healthy as any other starting pitcher being drafted in this range.
Yeah, you got to remember projections are all supposed to be 50th percentile,
right?
Like outcomes. Like innings pitch, if it were a category, you in anything, if you're projected for 160 innings, you're either going to get 180 or you might get 120, and you have to decide which one you think is more like. It's like arbitration. You've got to pick, is it going to be higher or lower? Or great, then there's the value. And then that's where you're getting this value, this potential value when you're drafting. The projections are right on the money, but I do think that it's more likely that they go above that 50th percentile and less likely that they give me below that 50th percentile. And that's where the value, and that's where ADP comes into play as well. How does everybody else feel, or how has everybody else felt about it?
So how do you feel with Jacob deGrom being projected for less innings than he threw in the first year after finally getting the surgery we've been wanting him to get for years? He's projected for less innings in 2026 than he had in 2025. I'm taking the over.
I for deGrom, absolutely. Sale, I don't know why. I just have this mentality.
Same. I have to convince myself, but I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I know I'm convincing myself of that as I started out, but I'm getting there, I think.
Yeah. All right. Well, those are your aces in this category, bunched together, like I said, around that, the 12th and 13th, 14th pitcher off the board altogether. Let's move down the ADP board or the draft board down to around the 120, 130 range, with Kevin Gausman in Toronto and Sonny Gray now with my Boston Red Sox, going at respectively 122 and 135 overall off the board. And if I can scroll fast enough to find them, that's, Control F is my friend. Sonny Gray, 49th pitcher off the board altogether. Gausman, 43rd. Other players in this range, regardless of age, in the starting position. Brandon Woodruff going right before both of them. Spencer Strider going right before both of them. In between, we have Tyler Glasnow, Chase Burns. Of course, we got to find the youngest guy possible in all these conversations. And right after Sonny Gray is Jacob Misiorowski, followed by Michael King. So we've got the likes of Chase Burns and Jacob Misiorowski going side by side with Kevin, the statesman of Kevin Gausman and Sonny Gray. Both very similar to Sale and deGrom, have had their health issues, have had had made tweaks in their repertoire throughout their career, whether they liked it or not. I'm looking at you, Sonny Gray, with your time in New York. And I don't expect those types of changes. We talked about this a couple episodes ago. I don't expect these type of changes to happen again with either one of them, especially Sonny Gray going into a new situation, just because of his experience and his success he's been able to show. Sonny Gray in what ultimately will end up being the final year of his contract, possibly his career. We'll kind of see. He did an interview a while back before signing with the Cardinals that there was a non-zero chance that he would just retire after his contract was up with the Twins. Obviously, that didn't happen. He took the money. There you go. So he's in the final guaranteed year of his contract now with Boston. There is I believe it's a mutual option for next year, which nobody expects to get picked up. And then Kevin Gausman, obviously, still in his contract with. I actually don't even know how many years it is, but I don't think it's close to being done with Toronto. These guys, obviously, you're not waiting this long for an SP1. Like neither one of these you would consider to be an SP1 on your fantasy team, regardless of league size. But like in their situation, like how much are you trusting either one of these guys to just continue to work the way that they've been working? Gausman obviously had some of his own hiccups, in the recent past. Sonny Gray had overall a great season last year. Yeah. Do you trust either one of these guys more so than the other, and or does that trust carry over in comparison to the younger shiny toys that are going around right around them?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not so much these guys I trust. It's PLV and the projections. They're ranked way higher in this, especially Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray is the number 22 pitcher, and that's including relievers. So he's close to a close to an SP1 for fantasy baseball purposes, according to PLV projections. So I absolutely love him in this spot. He's being drafted well below that. And Gausman, not as undervalued, but we saw some things from Gausman last year, and the ERA is up there 3.96, and that 4 ERA, that's where we really start wondering if this is going to be my SP3. That's a little rough. SP4, then I'm more interested, but slightly. But he is still, according to the projections, undervalued where he's being drafted right now. So definitely on Sonny Gray, a little more tepid on Gausman, but still interested. I think you're on mute.
I think at first glance, the move to Boston for Sonny Gray, people are like, oh no, Fenway Park. And yes, there is going to be added doubles. But Kyle Bland put out some great ballpark factors that you can find in the Discord. And if you're a PL Pro member, a little bit more detail. But Fenway doesn't necessarily increase your home run rate per se as a ballpark all by itself. So not as much of a concern. The Green Monsters actually may even help Sonny Gray keep the ball in the park in general, except on the pesky pull. Right field in Fenway is actually not very close either. And so I'm not necessarily worried about the ballpark as much as anything else with Sonny Gray specifically, in the way that he kind of attacks hitters. I don't think it's going to play as much of a factor in my concerns there. I have more. It's funny. I have more interest in more trust in Sonny Gray than I did at the beginning of the offseason. Being in Boston, not only if we're chasing wins, obviously he's on a better roster. And I think he's going to have a little bit more offense helping him out in that realm as well. Also, on the final year of his contract, Boston's just going to get as much as they can out of him, right? It's like no expectation of babying him or pulling him early in games. I expect Sonny Gray to go at minimum 5, if not 6, 7, 8 innings at times throughout the course of the season, and just kind of like just be that horse right side by side with Ranger Suarez now and Garrett Crochet in that rotation. Gausman, I have a little bit less trust just because of all the bumps on the road we did see recently. Toronto obviously being a positive as far as a winning ball club. You can chase wins there, but if I'm going to build an all 35 team, I don't know that I'm going to double tap these guys, because you have to, right? In your situation, if you were going to build that kind of a roster, I will push Sonny Gray up, but I probably will pass on Gausman at this point, even though, yes, the projections are all in favor of that situation. Your overall thoughts on, I guess, Gausman as well?
Yeah, I agree with that for the same reasons. That's where exactly where I was leaning and why. Yes, he's a bit of a value. I'm interested. We did see some good things from him at times, especially in the postseason that that give us hope that he can be what he was 3 and 4 years ago. But there are those concerns there as well that lead me to I like Sonny Gray a lot more. Yeah.
Yeah. And so do the projections. Well, at least PLV projections quite a bit.
Right.
Though some of the one of the names we mentioned is right there in the middle, Chase Burns. Chase Burns is definitely a PLV darling when it comes to young pitchers for it being projected for 2026. But we are not talking about the young pitchers. We're only talking about the elder statesmen, and we are going to get to a couple more of those. But first, we do have to take our quick break. All right, Kevin, we're going to keep going with pitchers in the starters category. We got a couple of questionable health-wise pitchers going into 2026, but still being drafted as if, well, that's not true. Because if you knew Zach Wheeler was going to be healthy, there's absolutely no reason he would be going at 146. So he's not being drafted as if he's healthy. But 146 for how we saw Zach Wheeler end the season seems generous at this point. And going right after him is Nathan Eovaldi. So we got another Texas starter, a veteran in that rotation going here in the top 150, 160 picks overall. And as I find... All right. So at that point, if you're not just drafting 35 and older players, you'll have your option of grabbing the likes of Ryan Pepio, Pablo Lopez, Emmett Sheehan. So we've got a couple of young choices here as well. You could take a little bit of an unknown in Tetsuya Imai, signed with Houston, Sandy Alcantara. As well. So Trey Savage in Toronto. So we do have a couple of, again, younger or less proven or completely unknown situations that you could be rolling the dice with. Rolling the dice with Zach Wheeler is a different type of game, different type of dice game that you're playing because, I mean, do you have any idea of when he will be back on the mound? And if and when he is, are you trusting that it will be Zach Wheeler who actually shows up?
He very well could be, but I'm not going to trust that with Zach Wheeler. I've made this mistake the past couple seasons with guys like Brandon Woodruff, guys that we know are injured going into the season. I am optimistic for Zach Wheeler. This type of injury, although we haven't really seen it yet, the type of thoracic outlet syndrome surgery he had, supposedly not as severe of a surgery as the other type that you can have. And there was even some speculation early December that he could be back by opening day. He did begin throwing catch in early December, but there's just too much unknown there. While Nathan Eovaldi historically has been much more injury prone, if we're going to use that term. What we saw out of him last season prior to his injury was absolutely amazing. We've seen him do that in short stints before. He had sports hernia surgery in October and is expected to start his winter throwing program on time when he typically would. So at this price, I am absolutely right. 10th round for what we saw Eovaldi do last year. If you get 80 innings and then he's injured again, I'm fine with that with a 10th round pick. So I'm absolutely in on Eovaldi here, but I have to force myself not to draft players that are injured, no matter how good I think they'll be, how soon. If they're injured right now, I have to stop. I've been burned plenty of times and cut back, but the couple of shots that I still think are worth it haven't been worth it. It might be for somebody, but I'm going to stop taking that chance on guys like Zach Wheeler.
Let's go back to kind of one of our first points when we're talking about Sale and deGrom. It's like we're looking at innings. If we're looking at innings and we're looking at projectable innings, PLV got Wheeler at 133. They've got Nathan Eovaldi at 165. Okay. So, I mean, you just don't know when that 133 is going to start and if it's going to be, to your point earlier, 100 innings. You are I'm less likely to say, hey, 133 is the 50th percentile. It's like, I think 133 is closer to the 80th or 90th percentile. And when it comes to innings, but if those innings do come, like, great, whatever. You just don't know when. You don't know when those innings are actually going to start. And I'm going with this because as I'm looking at PLV projections and I'm looking at the total value, that's one of the fun things of PLV projections. You pointed this out on one of our previous episodes. If you scroll all the way to the right, it gives you like not a dollar value per se, but like just an overall rank, like overall value, based on if you are, what stat categories you're looking at. And Wheeler and Eovaldi are just about right next to each other. Sandwiched right in the middle of them is Nick Pivetta, who, obviously just had career year, and it's coming on, and he is going as the 34th pitcher off the board in comparison to Wheeler and Eovaldi, who are 58 and 64 respectively. So, like in let's see, Pivetta's innings pitched expectations are 178. So obviously healthy, going to pitch all season, 50th percentile, that's fine, whatever. But there's an example of like having that career year and being potentially overvalued in drafts. Or I guess the question is Pivetta being overvalued, or are Wheeler and Eovaldi being undervalued, or is it both?
I think Wheeler and Eovaldi are being undervalued. Eovaldi much more so, because the thing about those innings, it, like you said, it's knowing when we're getting them. And with Eovaldi, as of right now, I know we're going to see at least we're going to see him in a Major League Baseball game before the end of March. We have no idea when that will be for Zach Wheeler. So that leads me to believe that, yeah, I'm probably not buying that 133 innings. That's 2/3 of the seasons he's been pitching, one of the few guys going 200 innings. Even if he comes back by the end of May, so there's 2/3 of the season remaining, he's not going to go as deep into games as he typically would. So, yeah, I just do not see him getting to that 133, like you said.
The Phillies have got to care way more about September and October than now, Nick Pollock will say this all the time, especially in like the AL East, a very competitive division or whatever. The win in April counts just as much, if not more so, than the win in September, right? Because it's all regular season, it all matters. But that being said, like the NL East is not the same as the AL East. Not to say that every team can't be competitive in the AL East, obviously NL East, but there's at least one that's not, or probably two that aren't going to be. And so they are going to care about that stretch run and grabbing the not only NL East title, but possibly, feeling as though they need to lock in one of those wild card spots toward the end of the season. And then obviously October, now being without Ranger Suarez, like their rotation in general is going to need to be as tight as possible, at least at the top. And having Wheeler not be stretched out too thin in the regular season is going to be kind of core and paramount to that.
I also think there's something to the fact that it's been a while. Zach Wheeler's been having these, 200 inning seasons leading up to this. Eovaldi, he's used to this. This is every season for him, right? I think there's something to that. He knows the routine of rehabbing and getting healthy. And this is something Wheeler hasn't had to do for a while. Early in his career, it was something we were concerned about with him, but he'd gotten over it for a few years, and now it's back. It's something he hasn't had to deal with in a while. So I think you got to give that a little consideration as well.
there's experience that we're talking
Yeah.
about that, right? We're talking about these guys who have experience. It just so happens Eovaldi has a very specific experience.
Right.
It's like clockwork. All right, we got one more pairing. We're gonna stay within the top 450 ADP here, as if you were drafting a 15-team FAAB league in the NFBC. The next grouping here: Merrill Kelly, who went back to Arizona, and Matthew Boyd, still with the Cubs, both going at an ADP of 230. And correct. No, we do have we got another grouping after this, but we'll just pair these these two guys first. And as I again get my control F under control, Merrill Kelly and Matthew Boyd are 89 and 90th pitchers off the board respectively, going right before Jack Flaherty, Roki Sasaki, and Shane McClanahan, and Jack Leiter, for that matter, if I'm going to put some youth in the conversation. And going right before them is as young as you get, with Connolly early in Boston, Andrew Abbott in Cincinnati, and then Chris Bubik with your Royals. And so, I mean, Merrill Kelly specifically is just that guy ever since coming back over. I mean, he's just been solid. He is Merrill Kelly has been somebody that in my home dynasty league has been picked up like once or twice throughout the course of the season, and then he ends up being picked up by somebody who's not going to make the playoffs because they know they're going to be able to trade him to a playoff contender in our league, and he has gotten traded to a playoff contender 3 out of the last 4 years. And each one of those times, if I'm not mistaken, he's been on the championship team. Like, he's won championships in my fantasy league.
He's your league's Will Smith.
Yeah, he really is. He really is. Even though he didn't really perform all that well for us in the playoffs, he just happened to be on the team that ended up winning. But goes back to Arizona, where he's seen obvious success. Very obvious he'll be, at the top, if not at the top of that rotation for I think it was a 2-year deal. Matthew Boyd still in Chicago, doesn't have to be the guy, but saw some success there as well. Again, more old and boring at this stage. This is where you expect to get the value out of these guys. And whether or not you chose to take your risk early and get some of those young guys early on, like, these are the guys you are targeting naturally to kind of balance out that risk that you took later on. Like, are you more comfortable with Matthew Boyd or Roki Sasaki at this point, going into 2026, regardless of role or how many guys are in that rotation or what have you? Merrill Kelly or Connolly, or like that one, that makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever.
Oh yeah,
I know I'm going to get Merrill Kelly in that rotation all year long. I have no idea when Connolly early is going to be in that rotation and how long he is in it once he is back up.
Well, and when we we use the phrase all the time, we've used it several times this episode, old and boring. These guys are really boring, right? Because they're Jacob deGrom still can go out there and strike out 15 guys in a game. We saw Matthew Boyd do that a time or two over the past couple of seasons, and it's amazing when it happens. It's shocking when that happens. It's not with deGrom. So these guys, the epitome of boring. And at first inclination, my preference would be Matthew Boyd due to the stronger lineup and what the two teams are respectively seem to be moving towards for the 2026 season. But the more I look at it, that is such a safe, nice, low whip that you're getting here with Merrill Kelly. And that is such an underrated category. It's so hard to fix in season that at this point in a draft, if I can get Merrill Kelly on a regular basis at the last pick of the 15th round / first pick of the 16th round where he's been being drafted, I absolutely think anybody should grab him there in any league just for that whip stabilization on somebody you're getting so late.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like you can't go 100% off these projections, but if you don't have it in front of you, I'm going to quiz you. Like, what do you think in a 172 inning season PLV has Merrill Kelly whip projected at?
I just looked at what it was for the
No,
last 5 seasons, so I'm gonna say 112.
it's projected at 127. And so
Wow.
that's the funniest part. I have not taken the time to dive into why that possibly could be, and how much that is being weighted. But I mean, really, not a good K rate overall, under 22% or 21.5% projected K rate for Merrill Kelly. And I'm double checking to make sure I'm looking at the right column here. Yeah, I am looking at the right player. But like the walk rate is really good. The K minus BB, 14.2% projected. So I don't
Okay,
necessarily
my
know.
112 was a little low. His last 4 seasons were 114, 119, 117, 111. The 111 in 2026. That's his last 4 seasons, but it's not just PLV. He is projected by Steamer for a 131, Oopsie a 130, the Bat for a 126. But this is one of those guys. Yes, eventually it falls apart, but after 4 seasons, we have to trust results more than projections in some cases,
Sure.
right? And so, yeah, you could be left holding the bag when he does put up that 130 that all the underlying metrics say he should be getting. But when I have 4 seasons under a 1-2, I'm going to stick with that for another season or two. He is 37 years old, but that means he's done this at 34, 35, 36 years old, right?
Yeah, and he's not relying on his overwhelming power or anything like that to get the results that we have seen over. I mean, you would have said the same thing about, oh, he's 36 years old. It's like you're
Right.
not making a big argument about, the 36 versus 37. In comparison, Matthew Boyd's whip at 119 over a projected 160 innings, so very similar
And he's
innings.
had those 1-3s in a couple of seasons recently.
Right.
So it's I should this is where typically in the past I would say trust the projections. But I think when you have a guy, I remember having this conversation with Alex Chamberlain years ago. Uh, when a guy consistently is outperforming projections, you at a point just have to believe it. And
Mhm.
the example at the time was when Kyle Hendricks was
Yeah.
on his
Right.
run of several good years, right? And I think that's what Merrill Kelly is doing. And yes, at some point it falls apart like it did for Kyle Hendricks, but
Sure.
I think he's still going to outperform projections in
You
2026
don't mind holding the bag, especially at
at the
a
price. Yeah.
200 plus ADP. I mean, I don't know how much this is taking into defense as well. I mean, obviously the Cubs have a decent defense in even Bregman, even though he's not like at the peak of his defensive prowess as he was, he's still very good at third base now
Mhm.
for the Cubs. Swanson has been better than expected as he ages at the shortstop
Pro
position for them as
Armstrong's
well.
amazing.
Nico
His
Herner,
center.
yeah, exactly. But now, and we'll get to him at some point or another, Nolan Arenado over at third base for Arizona after the trade. That would have been something we talked about if this was a news episode, but it's not. Perdomo over at shortstop, not anything to shake a stick at. And whatever they end up doing at second base, whether or not Ketel Marte plays a little bit more there or they kind of mix and match around there. So that's to say, I don't know how much defense is going to play a whole much into the whip projections of both of these pitchers. But I think your point stands in general. I mean, whip matters. And to get somebody who you trust is going to get 150 plus innings at this point in a draft, who's not going to hurt, if not very well should help your whip, regardless of projections. You have to make these kind of guys a target, especially at this point. Like, I don't mind jumping some of these guys up in order to stabilize that kind of a position if I'm confident that they are going to, ignore the projections and then do their thing.
Right. And, you know, um, due to being old and boring, they're a value at what they are projected. So if you think they're going to outperform projections as well, they're even more of a value.
All right. We got one last grouping. It's perfect because there's three of them. So I can force you to play Ask with them because they're going very close to each other toward the very ends of pretty much any draft that you're in as 15 or 12 teamer. Your boy Seth Lugo, Yusei Kikuchi, still with the Angels, and then Chris Bassitt in Toronto. Yeah, there's no more gladiators, so technically you can't draft the gladiator. But in that, like, which one do you feel the most confident that will get you the volume and you'll keep in your lineup or in your rotation all year round? Which one do you think will be a team streamer? That'll be your FAAB, your streamer there. And then which one do you think you would end up either completely avoiding or dropping pretty early on in the season if you did draft all three of these guys?
Yep. So typically, Seth Lugo would be like my draft and hold play. I love him in draft and holds, but for this exercise, I do believe he will be the most consistent. I know he had some struggles in 2025 after his amazing 2024, but with his 47 different pitches he throws and typically knows his this has a sequencing plan that he sticks with each game. I fully expect Lugo to bounce back for this exercise. He'll be in my lineup consistently because Yusei Kikuchi is somebody that I definitely will want to stream. And I like all three of these guys, but he'll be my streamer. Unfortunately, that means Bassitt will be my avoid. I like Bassitt, but I definitely like him less than each of Lugo and Kikuchi. And Bassitt's as he's getting older and older, the ups and downs, the valleys have been deeper over the past couple of seasons when he does have a little down spell. So for that reason, he'd be my avoid. But I definitely like all three of these guys, especially at the price. You can get all of them very late. And I think they're all worth a shot late in a 15-team FAAB league.
Man, I mean, I've never been that much of a fan of Yusei Kikuchi. If I am leaning on PLV projections, though, I think I am forced to change my mind.
Right.
He is easily the heavily favorite of the three between Lugo, Kikuchi, and Bassitt at this point. Being ranked right in line with the likes of Aaron Nola, Trevor Rogers, Grayson Rodriguez. I mean, that's a whole different conversation from an Angels pitcher. Reed Detmers, actually. So a whole bunch of Angels pitchers being ranked right around the same. But 177 innings with a whip that probably will hurt you at 128. It's just surprising to see him ranked so highly with those two things. It's like 128 whip is already bad enough, but you're getting 128 whip with 177 innings. That just weighs you down ultimately. So I don't know how much you expect, where you see that 177 innings to be 50th percentile or not, or 80th percentile. But yeah, I mean, this is it's just not something that I've ever been able to wrap my head around. At least not, I've never been able to be a big fan of Kikuchi. And then all of a sudden you see like one or two of those games where it's like, he strikes out 10, or like he's in a groove and you're like, oh man, I wish I streamed him. So I love the fact that he's your streamer because good and bad can happen. You don't want to be holding the bag every single time. Lugo seems, even though he is so far down on the PLV rankings, it seems as though something has to bend there. Like just because he had such a poor outing in 2025 and he really kind of burned a lot of people, I think that's the main reason he's going so far down. If he just kind of treaded water last year, he'd be going, at least a few rounds higher. Do you disagree?
No, I agree 100%. I think that is absolutely what is happening here. And, we didn't see him after August 29th either. And he'd given up 6 runs, 6 runs, 7 runs in three of his last 5 starts. So, yeah, people have a bad taste in their mouth with Seth Lugo, excuse me. Up until early August, he was giving us what he had done in 2024. And I do believe the injuries were starting to creep up on him. Maybe the pressure as well. Cole Reagans was hurt. The Royals were still fighting for a postseason spot and leaning on him and other guys with Reagans and Bubic out of the lineup. So that could have had something to do with it too. He might have felt like he needed to play through injury there. But yeah, I think Lugo is going to be right back to what we saw in 2024.
All right. Anybody past 450, Kevin, that kind of stands out to you as somebody you're like, hey, either, I mean, there's a couple of big names on this list that haven't found teams yet. There's a couple of just guys that you're like, oh, yeah, I wonder what he's going to do. Any names in here that you're just like, they either fit the bill for either one of those or any other worth talking about?
I don't think so. There are some guys I like late. Mostly they're guys that Nick Pollock likes really late, and they're not the older guys. Most of the thing about the older guys, they get drafted later than they should, but they do get drafted at the end of drafts. So they're going to be inside that top 450.
Right.
Because they're the innings
in those
eaters, right?
Yep.
Especially for pitching. They're the innings eaters.
Well, the ones that kind of caught my eye just because I wonder where they're going to be, obviously, if they're going to sign at all, Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander. I think the one of the rumors I heard was that Justin Verlander was talking to the Orioles, and I think that's very appropriate just so he can get all of the orange jerseys on the back of his baseball card.
Yeah, you wanted that last year.
Yeah. I don't know if Scherzer's gonna come back. No, but if I was going to force an ask, I was going to do Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, and Steven Matz, who actually has a team who is going to pitch probably in the starting rotation for Tampa Bay. Like, if you have one last pick and those are the only three guys on the board, are you more likely to go with the guy who you know is pitching or the guys that can actually maybe do something for you? That they don't have a team.
At that point, with those guys, I'm taking the guy I know is pitching. There is a case to take a shot there, but with those particular players, I'm going to take the one that's pitching.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. I was like, or you can just leave, have the empty bench spot if you want. All right, we spent a whole lot of time on starters. Let's get into some relievers, but first we're gonna take another quick break. All right, not as many groupings here because relievers, of course, if you're drafting them, they've got to be a closer. Of course, you can stream some decent relievers, but at that point in their career, if they're over the age of 35 and they're not closing, they're probably not that guy. That at least not the one that you're drafting. So the ones that are being drafted regularly toward the top of drafts, at least in the top 100, first two Aroldis Chapman of the Boston Red Sox, and then Raisel Iglesias, who should very well be the closer for Atlanta. Once again, it's already been announced that he would be, with Robert Suarez being his setup man, at least to start the season. Robert Suarez also going about 80 picks after Iglesias as well, also fits the bill for this exercise. So just putting these three guys together, even though Suarez is going quite a few picks later on, and just considering the position, or at least in the FBC, everybody's the pitcher, but considering the category that you are targeting here with these relievers, Chapman at ADP of 70, going right around the other closers or relievers that are going right before and right after include David Bednar right before him, Josh Hader right after him, Devin Williams right after him as well. So there is a little bit of a grouping of closers in this 65 to 75 range of ADP. And then going down to that 100 mark or the 103 mark where Iglesias is, you do have another grouping of Emilio Pagan right after him, or a couple pitchers after him. Ryan Helsley a couple pitchers before him as well. So there's two little groupings of closers. How much are you willing? I mean, Chapman obviously did wonderful things for fantasy teams last year with the Red Sox, and everybody obviously based on ADP is expecting him to do the exact same thing going into 2026, even at his experienced age levels. Iglesias, not so much, right? Like, I mean, there was everybody, not everybody, I can't say everybody, but we expected him to be traded by Atlanta. And we expected him to be taken out of the closer role. There was a whole month period where we thought he was taken out of the closer role. But if you look a little closer, it's just that Atlanta didn't have any save situations to give anybody in that time period. Which one of these guys, if not both, are you more likely to kind of put your saves eggs into their basket?
Yeah, this is tough because I do have concerns with Iglesias and Atlanta for all the reasons you laid out. However, I'm taking that discount that we have over Chapman here. Chapman worries me. Last year was one of 2 seasons his entire career we've really seen him thrive in the closer role, right? And he's typically got high whips due to the walks. He was great last year, but he hasn't done it much. And we've seen a whole lot of Aroldis Chapman. We know he's nasty, he always has been, but he just hasn't been a ninth inning guy for much of his career. And that's all that Raisel Iglesias has been. And yes, he had some hiccups last season. Yes, the Robert Suarez on the surface makes that leash even shorter this season. But I think that probably pushes Iglesias as well. And he knows he's got to hold this spot down. So as crazy as I would have thought it sounded a few months ago, I'm going Iglesias here. And then even just a few spots later, down in that 103 range, you were talking about Kenley Jansen is here as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I like that over in Detroit. I know we saw the bullpen. We know AJ Hinch is going to move guys around to play matchups at times, but Kenley Jansen had to get some assurances or he wouldn't have signed.
He's chasing, yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I think I like both of these guys over Chapman, as good as Chapman was, and as big of a fan of Chapman as I've had Chapman on my team probably every single season prior to last season, because he would be one of my spec guys. He'll get the role. He's going to give me close to 100 strikeouts with a good ERA, horrible whip, but it's only going to be 60 innings of that horrible whip. And then I might get some saves if the number one guy goes down. I loved him. I can't see drafting Aroldis Chapman at the end of the 3rd round. And I've drafted closers in the 2nd and 3rd round plenty. I just can't do it with Chapman.
I mean, Hader's not quite at that age range that we're talking about.
I'd take Hader over him though. Yeah.
But you got Chapman and Hader right next to each other. Even with Hader's like health issues at the end of last year, didn't quite make it back in time to kind of see him. You know, that whole the adage that you keep hearing about. It's like, I want to see somebody on the mound at the end of the season, even if it's just for like 1 inning, just to see him make it out there. Hader did not fit that category versus Chapman, who has all the other concerns. And you answered Hader pretty quickly there without even me having to set it up. Yeah, I like thanks you for catching the Kenley Jansen one, obviously in there as well, around ADP of 142, going well before Suarez. You know, do you like you it sounds like you're obviously more in line with Raisel Iglesias being pushed because of Suarez being there. Are you backing him up? Are you handcuffing him with Suarez at that 80, at that price, 187, being Suarez's current ADP. I can't imagine that jumps up as we go in, unless we see some kind of injury or some kind of terrible outings out of Iglesias in the in spring training. But at 187, Suarez going right around, the other relievers that he's going around are the likes of Ryan Walker, right after him. Not a whole lot of relievers going at that point. Dennis Santana is going about 20 picks prior to Robert Suarez, and then you got Griffin Jacks in Tampa Bay going about 20 picks or 30 picks after him. So at that range, there are some spec closers, or some closers, if you believe are true closers, that you can still go after. But if you have Iglesias, do you just handcuff him with Suarez?
It depends on the draft, because I'm looking at the graph of his positions he's been drafted. He's went as early, just in the past week, he's went as early as 115. I'm absolutely not taking a spec pick there when I think Suarez, and I can't at his average ADP or average draft position either. Average
Yeah.
I can't there at his average either, because that's 13th round of a 15-team league. That there's still a lot of good players. I'm not taking a spec closer if I think Iglesias is the guy there. But in some of these drafts in the past week, he's been taken well after pick 300, 348, 419, 350, 411. If he's fallen to that range, 350 to 400 range, then I'm absolutely considering, because he's a guy I can use in my lineup anyway. We talk often with these guys, and he is the handcuff to a guy that I drafted for saves only. And if he loses the job, I absolutely believe it will be because Suarez takes it from him.
Mm-hmm. The last reliever really worth talking about, I think, and I'm excluding Andrew Kittredge, who's going around 535. Obviously the setup man in Baltimore to Ryan Helsley. We have Kirby Yates, who signed a deal with the Angels, and if you look at roster resource, has him as the third man in line to Robert Stevenson, Drew Pomeranz as the lefty specialist here at the end of games. But obviously, between Kirby Yates, Jordan Romano, there's a whole lot more experience at the end of games than Robert Stevenson. As much as we love Robert Stevenson and are excited about this, there's a whole lot to like, or there's a whole lot to like with the Angels situation. And expectations could be that they just give Kirby Yates the opportunity to take that job for the year that he's with them, if nothing else, so that they can have a little bit more value to trade him away. And I don't see, there's not a whole lot of other good, and this is a spec pick you take with your last pick, regardless of size of draft. Maybe you don't take it in a 15 teamer. You might have to take him with your 28th pick instead of your 30th pick. But in your 12 teamer, you're definitely taking Kirby Yates with your final pick in your draft, if you are at all. Are you doing that? Is Kirby Yates that type of veteran reliever that doesn't technically have the job, but you will not be surprised in the slightest that he ends up with it come, April 1st?
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked, but I think I'd be more surprised if it isn't Yates. I won't be shocked. Like you said, the injury that Stevenson suffered 2 seasons ago, when we both liked him a lot, and I think you liked him even more than I did. You had a whole lot of Stevenson on your early teams that season. I think we would love to see this, but I would guess Yates probably gets first shot here, and then Pomeranz, at the moment, the only lefty in that bullpen. So he'll get a handful of saves, but they're not going to save him for those opportunities on a daily basis, I wouldn't think. So yes, absolutely, Yates is worth the flyer at the end of drafts right now.
Yeah, no, after looking into this list, that's the name that really stood out to me the most when it comes to opportunity, value in ADP, experience level, the situation that he's in. I like that. I like that a whole lot, especially as, I like using that last pick in drafts on a spec closer, especially if I didn't double tap early on. And so that seems like a really good grab at this point. All right, so we're done with pitchers finally. Let's get into some position players. I think this will be an easy one because there's not a whole lot of them. Um, We'll go in the order of positions on the diamond. That means pitchers 1. Let's go down to catcher, get it out of the way. We've only got 2 here on the list, and Salvador Perez going at ADP of 94.5. And alongside JT Realmuto, who just re-signed with the Phillies. After they didn't get Bo Bichette, they're like, fine, we'll bring back JT at 208. So obviously a big gap there. Not a whole lot of, 35 and over catchers that you trust. I mean, as drafters, right? That are going within the top, the next catcher off the board of that age is Kyle Higashioka, going at 487. So he's not even going in most drafts, at least not most 12 teamers, and a whole bunch of 15 teamers as well. So these guys let's start with JT Realmuto. Is he a C1 in your mind? Are you willing to like wait on catcher, knowing that JT you can get outside the 200 and then maybe double tap for somebody that's right around that age? Or is he a C2 or even not an option?
He's definitely at least a C2. I would have a hard time. He might be at the very end of C1 in 15 team leagues for me. The at bats were back in 2025, 502 at bats. So well over the 500 plate appearances that I want out of my catchers. Yes, the power was down, but still double digit home runs, and the speed came back just a bit. So I think he's being drafted in the right range. He's not being drafted as a C1 at the moment, but close to it. And I think he's in about the right spot. After Realmuto, and this would be one of the guys that I probably would push ahead of a couple other guys as well, Realmuto, because if healthy, I do think he'll get close to, if not those 500 at bats that he got in 2025. And there's not many guys below him that will get there. And if they do, the batting average, like Logan Ohape, we don't want that many at bats with his batting average. So I think Realmuto is in the right spot here. I wouldn't quite be comfortable with him as my C1 because there's nobody after him that I'm comfortable with getting the at bats I need. But I think he could squeeze in there on a couple of my teams as my C2. But remember, I'm taking a C2 pretty early because I want those at bats out of my C2.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, he did sign a 3-year, $45 million deal to go back to his Phillies. So obviously he is still the guy behind the plate and will be at least for the next season or two for the Phillies at that price point. And so you're going to get the at bats. He's not going to be getting a whole lot of extra time at first base or at DH because those positions are called for in Philadelphia between Harper and Schwarber, pretty much playing those positions every single day. But that being said, he's still being paid to be the guy behind the plate. So I expect him to be in there, 4 to 5 times out of 7 on a 7-game work week for the Phillies. Going back up to Salvi, though, I mean, this is a guy who's as trustworthy as they come when it comes to, being catcher eligible, getting the at-bats that you're looking for, especially at the position, and going within the top 100, is the second most valuable catcher as far as PLV is concerned. with 592 at bats, 643 plate appearances projected. Another 30 home run season in pretty much pencil it, or at least pencil it in according to PLV. Everybody's worried about. I mean, not everybody, but I think the common consensus is that it's just old at the position. He's still catching regularly. And so it's like, how much longer can he do that? And with the added mouths to feed at first base and DH, is there a breaking point for Salvi to not get to that 600 or 590 at bat mark that you really want to, or does he kind of transcend that concern?
I think he transcends it. I did the Royals preview with KC Bubba a couple weeks ago, and you just brought up second most valuable catcher on PLV projections. He's third as far as the bat X, which I love for hitting projections as well. And he's being drafted as the 8th catcher. That's all we need to know.
Yeah, you might as well take advantage of that while it still lasts.
Yep.
And don't listen to Casey Bubba talk about catchers, because you'll have more information than you need. All right, let's move. If we want to lump Salvi into the first base conversation, sure, but you're not drafting him to play first base. So if you are looking for an elder statesman at first base, you can go early on, right? You can get Freddie Freeman, ADP of 64 over the last couple years. Easy first, or at least a second round turn type of player. Now getting jumped down a little bit after a little bit of dip in production. Obviously getting up there in age as well, kind of showing a little bit of that in his World Series championship run with the Dodgers last year. And Christian Walker is the next one up. Again, I'm skipping Salvi here, going all the way at 183. So we talked a little bit about this when we were doing our mock draft with PLV at the first base position. Let's just put it this way. Do you see a 120 pick difference between Freddie Freeman and Christian Walker at this point?
No, absolutely not. And
is there a difference? Sure,
a lot about
but it's
this,
not 120,
right? And yeah, we've talked about this. I talked about it with Bubba when we were talking Vinny Pasquantino last year. I thought he was a great value. This year, I think the production he is projected for and what I expect is fine at where you draft him, but you don't have to, right? Christian Walker at near pick 200 in a down year, playing through an injured oblique all season, had 27 home runs and 8 stolen bases. I mean, I will have Christian Walker on every team that I draft if he stays in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even about Christian Walker per se, though. Too,
but
it's
guys like him as well. Yeah,
right. It's like, again, the difference between what you're getting in the 3rd or 4th round, after Cutts goes, after Vlad goes, like after these top 3 guys go, regardless of age, why? Like, there's no cliff. I mean, it's not like that's the cliff, right? 1, 2, and then big cliff, and then a huge plateau.
My big weakness is not being able to pass on Vlad. If I have an early pick and he somehow slips the late second, I have such a hard time passing. But I should be, because yes, to your point, there's all these guys late. Wilson Contreras. Paul Sporer, by the way, was talking on Sleeper in the Bust about these guys this week when they did their first base preview. Mm-hmm. And he's the one that I had forgotten. I knew Christian Walker was off to a really slow start last season. I forgot about the oblique injury that he had in spring training that kind of lingered throughout the year. So that's a great point. And then him and Justin brought up, and I've heard other people bring this up as well, Wilson Contreras is getting a bigger discount than he should because he's no longer catcher eligible. Sure. People are forgetting about him at first base when he's still worthy of an earlier pick. So, but sticking to our 35 and over guys, I love Freddie Freeman. I love that we can get him in the 5th round now when we have been having to spend a 1st round pick on him in previous years. However, the way you phrased the question perfectly earlier, am I going to spend a pick there when I can get very similar 120 picks later? You're not getting the batting average with Christian Walker you'll get with Freddie Freeman, but you can get a very valuable first baseman. Freddie Freeman in the 5th round, if I've went guys with a shaky batting average, then that may be where I say I should probably grab Freddie Freeman here, and he would definitely be worth a 5th round pick if I'm hurting in batting average.
I think the other thing that I kind of stood out to me is the fact is just the lack of names we're talking about in this exercise. Like I don't know, my mind goes to this, first base is where you go to retire. It's like if you are still producing and you were a third baseman, you were, a corner outfielder, or you were something else. It's like, all right, we'll just move you over to first base and let you finish out your career. You still have value. You still have production left that we can get out of you. And we're only talking about 2 guys. Like now, I mean, you could make an argument that, maybe Paul Goldschmidt has something left, but he's going at 552 ADP. And that's it. That's the list of 30 of guys that are 35 or older going into 2026 that have first base eligibility that are being drafted. There are 4 guys, and that's including Salvador Perez. Now, I guess that's funny. You say that about, Wilson Contreras not being, being undervalued because he doesn't have catcher eligibility. Do you think that Salvador Perez would have the same kind of discount if he had lost catcher eligibility and was only first base eligible, or God forbid, UT only?
I think he probably would. But because I'm looking at Fangraphs right now, and it's only $1.10 difference between the position value for catcher and first base. So you'd only drop him down 2 spots. He would just drop. He would drop to being even with Wilson Contreras, and I would take Salvador Perez over Wilson Contreras for the. I think he has more power.
Yeah, sure.
Especially with the fences coming into Kansas City. Another news item that we're not talking about this week, because Salvador Perez surprisingly is a player that hit a lot of balls to the warning track last season. And that's where the fences are coming into, is the width of the warning track in the power alleys. Center field's staying the same. It's just the alleys coming in.
Fair enough.
Perez hits a lot of oppo balls to the alley as well there.
That'll be nice to watch and see the differences there. I'm sure there'll be plenty of articles kind of outlining at least the first 2 months in Kansas City and the differences that the wall, not only are they coming in, but they're coming down as well. So, make those line drives a little bit easier to to poke themselves over the wall. But I mean, I think the only at this point, the only reason why catcher is even, more valued is because you need 2 of them. And I think you're going to see, well, no, all right. I was going to say you're going to see a lot of third basemen as your corner on teams, but that's probably not true. There's probably going to see, because there's so many first basemen that are all the same, especially later on, that there'll still be plenty of first basemen being put in as your corner, but you don't have to. So I think that's really the catcher. We all know we're seeing a little bit of a catcher renaissance right now. And so if you only needed 1 catcher, like that value would completely, dissipate. All right, well, let's get into the middle infield positions. I might have to lump these together because there's not a whole lot there, which is not terribly surprising. As I said earlier, it's like first base is where, as you get older, you start moving guys over to that position. But we do have at least 1 second baseman, 2 second basemen in the top 250, but one of them close to the 100 mark. Jose Altuve, still outfield and second base eligible, going around 112. And then scrolling down a little bit further, we do have Marcus Semien still going in the top 150 of overall ADP. Now with the New York Mets, going to be playing second base for them this year. No shortstops to speak of, not until we get to Miguel Rojas with the Dodgers, who has second and short and third base eligibility, but you can get him wherever you're drafting him at ADP of 668. And so of these 2 second basemen, ultimately, these guys, obviously, Marcus Semien had a stretch of 3 or 4, 5 years where he was 160 games every single year without fail, like clockwork. Um, does how much of that carries over to now his time with a new team in a new situation? How much of that veteran's presence and that experience do you weigh when you are considering? I mean, Altuve, you could say very similarly, he's had his injuries and what have you, so not as much of a workhorse in that regard. But with Simeon specifically, obviously some of the overall production has gone down, but if he can volume his way in that lineup, um, does that make him more of a value or target, especially at the second base position?
I think so. I wasn't as intrigued by Marcus Semien earlier in the offseason, but the more I've thought about it, and especially if Jason over at Roster Resource is correct or close to it, having him towards the middle of the order. I kind of assumed he would be closer to the bottom, but yeah, if Tyrone Taylor and Carson Benj are going to be in this lineup, he's probably ahead of them. And then Beatty and Alvarez, he has them ahead of them as well. That will increase the health. I think we get back to close to, if not over 600 plate appearances. We may not see the 162 games anymore, like you alluded to, that we saw for 3 or 4 straight seasons, but he still had 15 home runs and only 470 at bats last season. I think Marcus Semien, like you said, he's going to be the everyday second baseman for the Mets, and his defense will keep him in that lineup. And if he's going to be in the middle of it, even better. I was assuming he'd be towards the bottom, but absolutely, I think Marcus Semien is a great player for me if I didn't get one of the earlier second basemen I wanted, right? If I missed out, because it's second base is you have your 3 or 4 top guys. Altuve then is just outside of that at 5th. And I don't think I'm going second base in that range. I think I'm looking elsewhere, other positions, shoring up my pitching, because at that point, there's just so many questions about all of the second basemen. And then if I don't get someone like Polanco, Gleyber Torres, guys I like, even Matt McLain at his price. I was never a Matt McLain guy when we used to have to spend a 3rd or 4th round pick on him. I'm perfectly fine down here where we're getting him around pick 240 these days. I love Gleyber Torres where he's being drafted, but if I miss those guys, if I'm waiting, because I'm waiting on my second baseman, not my middle infielder, if I'm waiting for these guys at this point. And then if they get snagged from me, Marcus Semien is a nice fallback because you at least know you're getting that volume you talked about. And if he's healthy, he's back to 20 home runs with that volume.
Yeah, something to be considered, the fact that we're talking about just these second basemen, right? And I just mentioned there's no shortstops on this list. So there's no veteran fallback shortstop that you can really
they've moved on to positions where they don't need as much speed anymore by 35.
They end up moving to second base or third base, and if they still have the arm, right? But that's to say, there's a grab you might need to grab that second base and not take those kind of risk at shortstop position earlier on in your drafts, even though it seems like there's a lot of them toward the top.
You probably want to.
But there's still some risky there's the minefield a little bit, right? So it's like this is not an area in which you feel like you could probably take a risk on at that position because you don't have that fallback option later on, right? And there's not going to be something that you can get off the waiver wire that's going to fill that position in a surprise manner at that position. So I think that's enough on the middle infield in general, but just eye-opening the fact that you just don't have that option at shortstop, right? Specifically later on in your drafts, or probably on your waiver wire. And if you are spending that kind of capital in FAAB on a shortstop coming up, they're probably a rookie. They're probably a prospect that are making their debut. And you're like, I need a shiny new toy anyway. And we all know how much risk comes in that situation as well. So probably not a way I want to spend my FAAB, at least early on in the season.
I want to mention one name just because we didn't talk news, and it seems like he should be old enough for us to be talking about him. And that's Mauricio Dubon, the way it's looking right now. Unless there's some movement, he's going to get the plate appearances. And with the 4-position eligibility, he's always a draft and hold darling, but he may have some deep FAAB league play here early in the season at least.
Yeah, how old? I mean, I feel like
he's only 31. He seems like he should be 41.
Yeah, 4 positions. Wow, in the NFBC, this isn't just Yahoo.
Yeah.
Like this is he's right. everywhere. All right, going to the hot corner then. As I scroll through the list, not a whole lot of names at this position going into their at least age 35 season. In that the list is it's a list of 2, not including again Miguel Rojas, who's third base eligible over at ADP of 668. Right at our cutoff at 450 is Nolan Arenado, traded over to the Arizona Diamondbacks. And in the NL West as well, Max Muncy of the Dodgers, obviously not Max Muncy, the youngster in West Sacramento. And he is going around about 225 picks earlier at 252. And get my filters all correct. Just to kind of put that in perspective, Muncy at 252 makes a whole lot of sense. I remember he was going at 252, not this past draft season, but the season prior when we weren't sure what his health situation was. He was having surgery, not having surgery, whatever. All of a sudden, that news just kind of came out in the middle of the offseason. And he, in one draft, I think we were in together, he dropped to 250, and then he started kind of creeping his way back up. Now it really seems as though he's not only by way of playing time, but also production in general, being a batting average suck in general, like just sucking the life out of your batting average. And then maybe it doesn't hurt as much because he's not playing as much and not getting as many plate appearances because of those platoon splits. But it seems like this is the right ADP for him at this point. Arenado, 450. Maybe that starts changing with just being in the news usually changes draft position in general, even for a short period of time. But is third base just not a position that you can feel as though there is that backup, that rock that you can kind of lean on later on in your drafts?
Yeah, this is intriguing. I really, and I've been this way for a few years. I really only have interest in Max Muncy in OBP leagues for the reason you brought up with batting average, but his OBP is really good. So he's one of those players that completely flips, becomes a very valuable player depending on the format. Arenado, I did not think I would be in on. However, if we trust projections that have him approaching 20 home runs, over 70 RBI, approaching 70 runs scored with about a 250 batting average. This is what I've been saying for the last couple of seasons on why I draft Josh Bell and Nolan Arenado. You can get with the last pick in a 15-team, 30-round draft. Those stats are about what he's being projected for. I have to be in. As a corner infielder, just like I was on Josh Bell as a corner infielder at this point. And I think the hope is he could outperform these. Now, do I expect that? Probably not. And I probably lean, the bad X, 17 home runs, not quite 20, but that 252 batting average, it's somebody you're getting in the last round of a draft, and they're not a zero in power. And they do get the runs and RBI, not 80 to 100 like we get from the top guys. But once again, this is a 30th round pick. I didn't think I would be, but I have to be in on Arenado at this price.
Yeah, I mean, this is just something, if you need it, you could feel better about it in general. But it's not something, if you miss out on it, it'll probably be on your waiver wire that you can, make that decision in the first week of April. I'm curious to go back up to that 250 range. Max Muncy, with all of his concerns, like, he's going right next to guys who we have absolutely no idea what to expect from, because we have not seen them. And that is Munetaka Murakami, signing with the White Sox, and then Kazuma Okamoto, who signed with Toronto, coming in from overseas, playing in being third base eligible at their new major league, at least coming into the 2026 season. Gun to your head, you've got to pick one of these guys. Like, are you going with one of the unknowns because you don't like or love what you're getting with Muncy? You know how he can hurt you. The other guys, you just don't. You don't know. It could hurt you more, right? It could, with everything we hear about Murakami and his strikeout rate and all that. Like, it could hurt you more, but it could go the other way as well, because they're probably playing every day, at least Murakami.
Yeah, but he's the one that I'm most afraid of with that strikeout rate. And we talked about that a couple weeks back. I don't like to say anybody is off my board. I do think there's a price where I would consider anyone, but Murakami is as close as it comes to being off my board with that strikeout rate. And I don't foresee him falling far enough that I would be interested. So the way you phrased the question, though, was the way to phrase it. Having to take one of these three guys, yes, I think I would take the chance on Okamoto over Muncy, not knowing, because, I would just expect a batting average that hurts me quite a bit from Muncy.
Yeah, you expect both of these guys, even with their question marks, to play every single day with their new teams, at least to start the season for the first half, unless they completely fall off and kind of prove that they should be moved into a different role. And so, with that being said, the concerns for Murakami are definitely there. And if the playing time is equal, go with the quote safest option with Okamoto in Toronto. So obviously also on a better team in a probably slightly better hitters park as well.
My real answer is I'm taking all these guys going after them ahead of both of them. Correa, Vargas, Clement, Keith, Young. That's the real answer.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Correa pretty much should fit into what's Correa's age? Correa's age is actually not that old.
He's younger than I thought too. 33, I think.
Yeah, okay. So we'll do this episode in 2 years and he'll make the list.
Oh, no, he's only 31.
Oh, okay.
That's why I thought, remember I was really surprised earlier because, when we started talking about this, a few guys popped into my head immediately. Freddie Freeman, Jose Altuve, and Correa did. And I was like, whoa, he's only 31.
All right. Well, we got to close it out here in the outfield position. Before we do that, we are going to take one more break. All right, so of course the big name in the outfield position is still going in the top 100, and that is George Springer, having a little bit of a renaissance this past 2025, and being drafted as such. Again, in the top 100 currently. You got to go a little bit further down. Giancarlo Stanton keeps or gains outfield eligibility going into 2026. With the Yankees going around the same spot as Max Muncy, Marcus Semien at the 250 spot of ADP. I will lump in Marcell Ozuna into this conversation. He is UT only at this point, but at 345 ADP, that's perfectly fine. And then within the top 450, you have Mike Yazstremski signing with the Atlanta on his short-term deal that down there as well. No other, and that's it actually. No other outfield eligible players as of right now being drafted in the NFBC. So let's start at the top, Kevin. Is George Springer being drafted just based on what he's done, or is there a combination of what you expect him to do going into it, and how much does the 5, needing 5 outfielders at this, needing 5 of the same position factor into how you balance out those risk and rewards as you are drafting the position?
Yeah, I've talked about this a little bit. I am trying to get an elite outfielder. I talked about it that I experimented with actually taking Juan Soto ahead of Bobby Witt Jr. in a mock draft just to see, and I liked my build better that way. I really think I did, having an outfielder, and I think you need a couple of outfielders pretty early in a draft because of needing 5 of them. And George Springer does still fit the bill as an outfielder too for me. He was definitely an outfielder 1 last season, and he spiked that 309 batting average. We absolutely do not expect that. Projections all have him right around 260-ish. And that's what we had seen in previous years prior to. He had the lowest batting averages of his career and the highest batting average of his career the last 2 seasons. So I think splitting that difference, which is what he had done for several seasons prior to that, is what we can expect back to that 260 range. But still, mid-20s home runs and mid-teens stolen bases, 70 RBI, 80 runs scored leading off for Toronto. That after making that World Series run, they're making moves in the offseason to try and improve and get back there. Yeah, absolutely love George Springer here at this price. And I think the only reason we get him for this price is that 36 years old at the top of the screen.
It's exactly. I mean, this is ageism encapsulated right into one person. Especially like it's like one of those, what more does a guy have to do to gain your respect? Like coming back and putting up what he did in 2025 at that age, still leading off a majority of the season, and still kind of like putting in the time. He missed a little bit of time, but not a whole lot throughout the 2025 season. So it seems though he's going at a little bit of a discount, going sandwiched between overall outfielders, Seiya Suzuki and O'Neal Cruz. So obviously still a lot of risk involved. Michael Harris the second going after that as well. Randy Rosarina, who just re-signed with Seattle, going right before both of those guys. So it seems like George Springer is as bad as he was, or at least as much of it seemed like he was falling off going into 2025. He is a little bit more of a stable option right here, near close to the top 100 mark of ADP at the position.
Yeah, and he's played nearly a full season every season for 10 seasons but 1. Right. And that was 2021. He's had at least 583 plate appearances in 4 consecutive seasons since his age 32 through 35 seasons. So I don't think I have any reservations with his age at the point he's being drafted.
The other, and this was surprising to me a little bit. I don't think I realized he played enough time in the outfield to be eligible, but Giancarlo Stanton at 250, again, Max Muncy, Marcus Semien in that same range. Is he just going at the 250 spot because of the outfield eligibility? Or do you see him actually providing the type of value he once did for fantasy teams, that he's worth that OF4, OF5 price tag?
He is definitely worth it when we can get him in our lineups. And that's the only question, of course. But, the runs would have killed you. Only 36 runs from a position over the entire season. But with only 281 plate appearances, the rest of your categories would have been fine. 24 home runs, 66 RBI with a 273 average is fine for where he's being drafted. And that was only 281 plate appearances. I don't know that we can get the close to 500 that he's projected for by most of the projection systems. The problem with Giancarlo Stanton is he may miss a large chunk of time at once, but he's also going to be rested on a regular basis. So you're probably never getting full scoring periods of plate appearances. That's the big drawback. This one isn't binary. Like we talked with the pitching, they're going to get way more or way less. Giancarlo Stanton absolutely could have around 400 plate appearances. And unfortunately, we don't, the time he misses is going to be spread out, but he can be very valuable. I just think for me, he's somebody that I'm more hoping is on the waiver wire when I need him than wanting to spend a draft pick. But and we saw it towards the end of last season when he was catching fire and had a lot of those 24 home runs. He can still launch the baseball, but it's just a matter of when he's going to be in the lineup, and the fact that the time he misses is going to be spread out that makes him so hard because you don't know when to leave him in your lineup.
It's not a platoon. It's not a strict shared timeshare, but you have Aaron Judge who's going to want to take over that DH spot a couple of times here or there. You've got guys that are going to want to get in the mix. Maybe Ryan McMahon moves over into DH a time or two, but there's nobody on their bench that has to have that DH spot. You know what I mean? It's more of like, hey, there's guys in the field that, hey, we need to get them off the field for a day, but we're not going to take Aaron Judge's bat out of the lineup. We're going to give Stanton a chance to rest even more so off of that DH spot and just sit the bench, and then he'll become that pinch hitter. So maybe you make up some of those in those situations. We talk about those rabbits that you can get later in drafts, or you can stream because they're going to get the pinch running opportunity. If Stan is being sat so that Judge can DH that day or something like that, he probably comes into the game as the first pinch hitter off the bat because he'll be the pinch hitter, and then he'll get pinched run for, or he'll also get, somebody else will go in for him into the field as well. So he still gets an at bat or two on the days that, or an at bat on the days that he does sit, but it's gonna be a headache kind of trying to manage that and trying to figure out when those are going to come, unless he's hurt. And if he's hurt, to your point, Stan doesn't get hurt for the minimum, right?
Yeah.
Stan gets hurt for 3 to 4 weeks at minimum. And are you going to want to hold Stan on your bench during those long stints of time? Probably not.
I was trying to, what I was getting at when I went through that, and you were supporting it as well. What I was getting at is, I wish I didn't like Stanton as much as I do, right? For the reasons we're giving. But then when you look at the outfield eligible players being drafted after him, there's a couple of exceptions. I think I like Ryan O'Hearn in Pittsburgh. He'll at least large side of platoon. Same with Josh Lowe in Anaheim now. But then Jung-Ho Lee, he started off strong and then fell off throughout the season. Tommy Edman, we don't know about his playing time. Then we got young guys, Justin Crawford, Dylan Beavers, Cedric Mullins in Tampa, Evan Carter's playing time's a question mark. Chase DeLauder, we've talked about him a lot and his injuries throughout the minor leagues. Wallner, Bader. I like Stanton better than a lot of these guys. So I think that we're back to that. We need 5 outfielders, and we may want to get all of them before this point in the draft if we can. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And we're only 19, 20 rounds in here where we're talking.
No, remember, I mean, we get Christian Walker just a little earlier than that. So you're filling your first base position. Yeah. And then hopefully you've already filled your outfield position, all 5 before you filled up your first base position, is what you're saying.
Yes.
All right. Well, the other 2 names on the list, Marcell Ozuna is an interesting case because obviously he's not even outfield eligible. He also doesn't have a team. Right. And so the opportunity for him to sign at this point like I don't see him doing much for his ADP. In general, at 345, being UT only, he's not going to be signed as anything but UT only anyway. So I don't expect him to gain any kind of eligibility. I just as much expect him to sign overseas at this point as well. So I mean, Marcell Ozuna is not on my radar. He's my Murakami, if you will. Like nobody is completely off until, but he doesn't have a team at all, and I don't expect him to get one that will make me interested. Any difference in opinion on Ozuna?
I don't think so. Projections have him for not much more power and not many less plate appearances
Mhm.
than 2025, which was not good. They have his batting average staying down here near what we saw in 2025, which wasn't good. So his underlying skills do not appear to be aging well. And we know some players age better than others. So this is a guy that at 35 years old, I agree with you. And I think I'm, for the most part, out on.
Yeah, I think this is the only one on the list where we're both just like,
Yeah, no.
sorry, age isn't even the thing here. It's just you.
Yeah.
And the last guy here, Mike Yusei, he's got signed in Atlanta. He would be a final pick of your 15 teamers at 444 of ADP. Atlanta's an interesting situation only because of what they went through last year with all the different injuries and the different situations, trying, Jared Kelenic a whole bunch of times, did not work out. He pretty much takes that position with roster resource expecting him to be in some sort of platoon. Jason's got him at Profar at the DH, but I would assume Profar would also kind of fill in that corner spot with Yazstremski switching out as well. Do you think he plays enough to be relevant once again in this situation?
I do. I think he was valuable at times, both with the Giants and then especially with the Royals last season, on the strong side of a platoon. And I expect that's where he'll be. But in weeks where Atlanta is facing all or nearly all right-handed starting pitching, I think Mike Yastrzemski can be a great fifth outfielder here. You don't have to draft him other than in a draft and hold, which I have taken him in a draft and hold because I think he will get that playing time. And I think I don't think I would not draft him in a 12-team league. In a 15-team league, you would have to in some drafts right at the end. I would be fine with that as a backup outfielder. I don't typically my sixth outfielder, because as we just talked, I don't want to wait for my fifth outfielder this long. And typically my sixth outfielder's probably got another position of eligibility as well. But he would definitely be in consideration. And then I think he's going to be somebody we talk about quite a bit this season, available on waiver wires when Atlanta has a lot of right-handed pitching coming up.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Just somebody that it's going to come up quite a bit, especially early on in our considerations for FAAB.
Mhm.
Well, Kevin, that pretty much numbs it. Is there any other name on this list in any position that we didn't talk about that you're like, oh, you know what? I can't believe we didn't touch on that guy or this guy?
I don't think so. And this was a good list because I went over it earlier when I'd been looking. Sean Armstrong being with another team and he's going way late, but he's somebody that we sometimes talk about in ratios throughout the year, but doesn't typically get when he does start, it's usually a piggyback situation or or he does end up with a couple of saves late. I still like Sugano a bit in deep leagues as an innings guy, but once again, his ADP is near pick 750. He's not somebody you have to draft other than in a draft and hold where I would, with one of my last couple of picks, but he's somebody I'll keep an eye on. He had flashes last season, especially early, where he actually helped my teams out quite a bit. And we're always going to pay attention to what Tommy Pham's plate appearances look like.
Yeah.
We're always going to pay attention to that. But no, I think for the most part, we touched on most of the guys, and especially the ones that are going fairly early. I think we don't believe they're going quite early enough. They're pretty good values, and that's what I expected to see as we went through this.
Yeah, that was definitely my expectation going in. I would have been surprised if we had really come to a different conclusion. And yeah, of course, it's going to be format dependent on how heavy you want to go in this area. But yeah, and not a lot of the conversations that we had about these players that I thought it would be more so is injury concerns. It's like as your body ages and you're concerned more about coming back from injury. Like even if you are injured, maybe your 15-day stint on the IL turns into 30 days just because it takes you a little bit longer to recover. But that wasn't really a large part of our conversation or concerns with a lot of these players, even though more than a handful of them do have injury concerns in the past. And so there is definitely a level of trust in a lot of these veteran presences, some positions more so than others. So definitely something you just want to consider as you are, going through your draft as well. Kevin closes out here as we came so close to the 2-hour mark on this episode with any other pieces of wisdom as we get closer and closer to PitchCon coming in at the end of January, to spring training, obviously right around the corner. And then, of course, all of our major drafts happening in February and March leading into the start of the season.
Yes, it's amazing. This is the best time of year, Adam, as we get geared up for this. And we're calling this episode our version of our position previews, but we will do our category previews the way we typically do it here coming up, and it's about time to get started on that.
Yeah.
As spring training's coming, so that'll be amazing. And I think not really words of wisdom, but over the past several exercises we've done like this off season, I've come to have new feelings about some players each episode. A couple of those guys tonight, I've always been a fan, but in spite of the injury history, I think I like Nathan Eovaldi even more than I would have thought I did coming into the recording this episode. And then the one that surprises me, because I thought I needed to talk myself out of him, but then looking at some of the players drafted after him, I'm probably in on Giancarlo Stanton for 2026, the way this is looking. So yeah, that's one of the cool things of coming to realizations like that when we do these exercises. And Kirby Yates, I think I'm definitely on board with. He's an easy late round spec closer at pick near 400 right now, because I think there's probably better than a 50-50 chance he has that job.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's fun to do these kind of exercises that are a little bit different than what you normally would do in your prep. It's like, let's just look at age bumps or age groupings. And we went to one end of the spectrum. Plenty of other sources you can get the other end of the spectrum. And we're probably not going to do one in the middle spectrum either. So it was fun to kind of see these names that popped or names that weren't on the list that you're like, oh, it seems like they should have been. And didn't realize.
Oh, and prior to looking to this, I had zero interest in Arenado, and he may be a corner on a team or two of mine the way I'm looking at it now.
There you go.
Yep.
All right. Well, after all of that, that's going to wrap it up for episode 240 of On the Wire. On behalf of Kevin Hasting, I am Adam Howe. Thanks for listening. We bid you goodbye.